I think people are actually saying now, like, actually give us some gatekeepers that actually know what they're talking about and help me find things that, an algorithm would never think to suggest. We are an independently owned, smaller company in a world of giant tech companies, but offering the same or superior way to listen to music as some of the biggest companies in the world.
The Fidelity Exchange, pulling back the curtain on brands shaping high-end audio and more.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Fidelity Exchange. I'm Drew Baird from Moon Audio, and today we're talking to Dan Mackta, Managing Director at Qobuz, the high-resolution streaming platform built for people who actually care about the sound quality. Dan's got a fascinating story, 30 years in the music business, working with everyone from the Backstreet Boys to Buddy Guy at the major labels. And now he's helping to build a streaming service that prioritizes quality over everything else. We're both former DJs. I did some house music back in New York and in Pennsylvania. He did punk radio, and we've both built businesses around the same philosophy. Quality doesn't require a luxury markup. If you're into music discovery, building for passionate audience and uncompromised audio quality, you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button and notification bell. Dan, welcome to the Fidelity Exchange. How you doing today?
Thanks, Drew. I'm pretty good. I can't thank you enough for that nice introduction.
Yeah, my pleasure. Well regarded. So give us a little bit about your background. Tell everybody out there a little bit about you.
It's a long story with a lot of ups and downs, but basically I've been in the music business on the sort of record side and artist side, managing artists and so forth, since the early 90s. Worked, starting in doing radio promotion and then marketing and independent labels, major labels, distributors, the whole gamut, working, like you said, very, very wide variety of artists. When you said Backstreet Boys to Buddy Guy, you're only covering the B's.
It's a big alphabet.
And, just basically a lifelong music lover, like you said. I started as a teenage punk rock DJ on my high school radio station, and I still do a bi-weekly music show on a community internet radio station here near where I live on Staten Island in New York. And music's just my thing. You can't see it, but I'm sitting in a room full of records, and that's my story. 100% music, and I feel very lucky that I've been able to make a living and provide for my family and do what I love to do in and around music, and getting to listen to music and think about it and be involved in the value chain.
Yep.
Getting music to people is like a privilege more than a job, although there's a fair amount of work involved.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about your DJ experience, because I'm obviously I'm not a radio DJ. I was a DJ for parties and in clubs and bars and stuff like that. What did you do in DJing?
Yeah, it was radio. My high school out in suburban New Jersey had a FM station, like not a super high wattage, but it could be heard all around the town and surrounding areas. And I got my FCC operator's license, in the late 80s, when they still required mid-80s. When was I in high school? I guess it was the mid-80s.
Yeah.
You had to have an FCC license and take a test. And I was, at that time, really into the emerging underground punk scene that was, still probably only on its second version of punk in the mid 80s.
Yep.
And had a great time doing a weekly radio show. I continued that in college, working at the college radio station, and have stayed part of that through community radio in different cities that I've lived in. And now I still play some punk rock, but what I do now is more of a free form, all genre, wherever I go, kind of weekly or at this point bi-weekly show. But it's I feel like DJing on the radio is a creative outlet itself. You know, when I was much younger, I did like play guitar and make music, and you know, I've not done that in a long time. And my creative outlet is putting together totally unexpected segues on a radio show.
It's cool. We were there at the same time. I'm born and raised in New York, born in '69, and I was there in the '70s and '80s, and then went off to college in the '90s, and so it was interesting how, you know, I got more into, well, I started, you know, I got really enamored by music, by hip hop when rap came out. You know what I mean? In New York City, it was just a crazy time. It was like this totally new music scene, right?
And for a second, it was
nothing
everywhere.
Like
we're exactly the same age. So I remember being in Manhattan somewhere at some event with my parents when I was a little kid. So it had to have been 79 or 80, really, the dawn of hip hop. And there were some guys hanging out a window rhyming with like a boom box, and I was like, "What?" I remember this was the first time I heard it. What is that? And then, you know, it really did. You know, we're exactly the same age, you and I. I think we discussed this.
And so interesting. I went more towards the house music scene, and you went more towards the punk rock scene. It was, I mean, just an amazing time in the '80s in New York City, without a doubt, from a music standpoint. And oh man, great times, great memories back then. So what are some other artists that you work with down the road in labels and so forth?
Well, you know,
or who is your favorite artist to work with?
Oh, a band, an indie rock band from the '90s from Memphis called the Grifters. They were on an indie label called Sub Pop Records, and totally, you know, they were done before really the internet got started. So they're kind of, you know, a little bit lost to time, but, you know, in that, you know, 90s indie rock scene, you know, I worked during my days at Sony with a band from Bowling Green, Kentucky called Cage the Elephant, who have developed into, they're basically, you know, arena headliners in their own right now. And
no doubt.
Big band. But when they were first signed, their first few albums, when I worked there, I was their marketing guy and worked super closely with them, and they were great guys. You know, I loved working with Bowling for Soup, who had one big hit single in the early 2000s, song 1985. They're kind of a pop punk band, but they were hilarious, and we just had fun, like making music videos and, you know, doing funny stuff. I loved working with Los Lonely Boys, who were a Texas blues rock trio who we, you know, I was working at an independent label, and we released their first real studio album, and it had a huge hit that I still hear in the supermarket, Heaven, to this day. I'm like, hey, that was our record. You know, that's the fun part of the music business, and then there's all the stuff that you love and that you put your heart and soul into that doesn't go anywhere, and that's the reality of the music business. There's more misses than hits.
So after 30 years in music, why Qobuz? Why did you transition to something like that?
Well, it's kind of like I was just saying. I've been working all these years on the marketing side of the music business for record companies, and for every successful project, there were 10 that never really got anywhere that you worked just as hard on.
Yeah.
And it is you know, can wear you down a little bit. And I was definitely thinking, as the years went on, and, you know, more and more consolidation at labels and wave after wave of layoffs, you know, the music business and the record side of the business is just not as many people working in it as there were. I mean, it's a fraction. Yeah. So thinking, how can I continue working with music and continue working? So I did have a lot of friends who, you know, went from the label side to work at DSPs, the bigger ones. And, you know, I looked for and considered jobs at some of the bigger, more well-known companies. But I guess thankfully I didn't get any of those jobs, because it left me, you know, I probably would not have been very happy. But as I was working at an independent label that had just been sold, as they are, and it was the process of shutting down. I was actively looking for something. And I saw, this was in 2018, and I saw a posting for a job on LinkedIn about Qobuz. And I didn't know what Qobuz was. It didn't exist in the U.S. yet. It had not launched in the U.S.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It looked somewhat interesting. High resolution music streaming didn't exist in the U.S. No one was doing it at the time. So I applied and kind of didn't really think that much about it because I didn't know anybody at the company. It didn't exist in the U.S. It seemed kind of like a long shot, but fast forward several months, I ended up getting hired. And at the time, like I said, Qobuz was not launched in the U.S., and it was not a sure thing that it was even going to launch. They didn't really have a plan together to make it happen. So pretty speculative. I thought, well, let's see where it goes. So this was 7 years ago. And in February of 2019, we launched. But, what I liked about the company from the beginning was that it was not super corporate. It was a relatively small company. It was based in France. I went over to France, to Paris, to interview and meet the team. And, Paris is a wonderful city. And the, French culture aspect was attractive. And, what they were doing, which was music only, high quality audio, human curation with a download store seemed to me like a no-brainer for a certain segment of music fans like me.
Yeah.
Said, I get it.
Yeah.
It made sense, even though it was not a super sexy high-tech company. Seemed like a really good fit for me. So it was worth the I guess taking the risk because, like I said, now it's 7 years later, and we've basically we launched and we have survived and grown. So
that's a great segue to talk about Qobuz's philosophy and technical excellence. I mean, the curation is really cool with Qobuz, and I think that's what really sort of drew me into the app. Everything. I always try to look for stuff that's very Apple-esque, if you will, right? Apple made things so easy in terms of the way everything functions and the way the web interface and the app interface flow is just really nice. And the new music that they're introducing to us on a daily, weekly, monthly basis is really cool curation, and I really dig it. So, what's the story behind that, and what's why are who's the brainchild behind really effectively creating that curation, that human contact?
Well, I wish I could take full credit, but it is just really the company's ethos, right from the beginning. It started in France in 2007 as a high-res download store. This was really before streaming maybe existed at all. And it was editorially focused originally on jazz and classical music and other, I guess for lack of a better word, highbrow tastes. And from the very beginning, it was, programmed by a human, music editorial team at the time, all based in France, who would go through every album, always album focused. And pick and select, their choices based on their taste, or as they say in French, their goût, I believe is the French word for taste. That's carried through. So, now it's obviously a streaming service in addition to a download store. It's in 27 countries. The music team, has branches, in the U.S. here, where I am. We have a small music team. There's people in the UK, in the Nordics, Australia, the different European countries, Japan, who all work kind of collectively, sussing out the coolest releases, the most interesting sonically and musically, in their purview. And in addition to being sort of responsible for a country and a territory, each one of these people has musical genre specialties as well.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of just an editorial staff working together. So the album selections that you see country to country do vary.
Yeah.
They're localized, but they're also there's a lot of crossover. A lot of things will be featured across all countries, and so there's kind of a strong spirit of finding really good music that's often outside the mainstream or not the top 40 stuff that you see absolutely everywhere.
Yep.
It's like other people have that covered.
Yep.
So part of the ethos is also to highlight music that may be underappreciated and underexposed elsewhere. We've got this kind of nice position where we do have an audience that is looking for really great music. So it's it's not some giant tech breakthrough. It's just humans picking music for other humans.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are competing with giants out there with Spotify and Amazon and Apple, and the bottom line is I'm gravitating more towards sites like Qobuz. I mean, I don't want to hear about the same big artists every day, all day long, pushing in my face. I love finding new music. I listen to a ton of music. I can't listen to enough. There's not enough hours in the day for the amount of music that I want to ingest. And I find, the artists that I'm finding on Qobuz are much more entertaining to me than on some of these giant sites that you just get lost in,
Yeah. I mean, it's a there's so much music released and so much great music that I'm sure we never even hear or find, but I do think there is a role for they used to call them gatekeepers. Get rid of the gatekeepers. I think people are actually saying now, like, actually give us some gatekeepers that actually know what they're talking about and help me find things that an algorithm would never think to suggest. That said, because people are used to some, kind of recommendations based on their tastes and, radio stations and things like that, Qobuz has introduced a few algorithmic features, things driven by, it's our own algorithm that we think is tuned to be pretty eclectic and Qobuzzy, but, a weekly playlist of recommended music based on what you've been listening to. But that's, it's on a tab in the app. If you don't want to have a computer tell you what to listen to, you never have to look at that.
Yeah. So what's your take on the non-impact by the new lossless format by Spotify? I mean, the great thing that I love about Qobuz is, from the start, it's been high res, right? I can get 2496, 24192, and here we are, a mega giant announcing lossless when really it's not much improvement over what they've been doing before, in my opinion. I mean, it's where they should have been 10 years ago, but anyway.
Right. Well, listen, before, when I first started with Qobuz in the U.S., 7 years ago before we launched, and I was excited. I had this new job. I'm going around talking to all my friends in the record business about it. And, so many people were like, yeah, that's cool, but I don't think people really care about sound quality. No one really wants, people don't care. It's not important. Good luck, was kind of what I was told. Good luck. And then a couple years after we launched, Apple and Amazon, right around the same time, both released their versions of lossless and 24-bit streaming. And to me, that was total vindication. Why would these giant companies do it if there was no market for it? These guys don't do something just to do it. Yeah. They probably had more MBAs than my entire team working on just the project, to make the business case. Yeah. Otherwise, they would not have done it. So there must be an audience for it. Somebody must care. And we were doing it first when no one else believed in it. So I think what's happened now with Spotify lossless is just an extension of that. When those services launched, and the same thing when Spotify lossless, we got a boost. because it opened up the conversation. All of a sudden, another swath of people realized that sound quality is a thing. That, and they Googled it and they saw best sound quality, Qobuz. I'll try that. So, any impact. I mean, for us, it was really just positive in that, hey, more people are going to be moving off of unnecessary lossy streaming, and it gives people maybe some aspiration to actually look into all this stuff a little bit more.
Yeah. How does the algorithm work in terms of when I'm picking music that I'm listening to? How is it figuring out, okay, maybe Drew's going to like this album or this artist? How does that work?
Well, I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you.
There you go.
No, I mean, to be honest, I haven't seen the 100. I don't actually know all the details. I know a big part of it is sort of adjacent listeners, like somebody else who's listened to a lot of the same stuff that you've listened to. And so it creates different scores that then will pull in stuff that you're unfamiliar with, but that other listeners have listened to. And it's evolving. We've actually recently, within the last 6 months, switched over 100% from we were using a third-party vendor that basically did all this tagging for us, and we totally revamped how we were doing it. So the recommendations have been getting a lot better, but sometimes the computer throws something totally wacky at you. I think it's just to make sure you're still listening, but
maybe. So what is Dan doing day to day? What's your day look like at Qobuz?
Really, it's something different every day. There's a certain amount of dealing with the big picture business stuff, putting together financial reporting for senior management in France, and right now we're looking at moving into a new office space. I've been working on that, so some sort of high level business stuff, but then it gets very busy with a lot of meetings, internal and external. Most of the back office functions, all the finance, licensing, all of that is in France. The partnerships that we do, I lead a lot of that. So, yesterday I had, a whole day of meetings with potential companies in different sectors that we may be partnering with. I travel. I'm at a lot of music conferences, hi-fi shows, representing the company.
So you're very much like an integrator. You're putting the puzzle together, it sounds like.
Yeah. But, my team oversees all of our PR, so I'm dealing with our publicists. There's the advertising and all the marketing that we do. I do have a team, but I'm also, I wouldn't say I'm a micromanager, but I'm very involved in everything. We've got at least in the U.S. team, really orientation towards action and solving problems, and I think that's the best way to go. If you've got a team, everyone has to be lined up towards the idea of, not just putting Band-Aids, but figuring out problems, solving them, getting things done, sometimes potentially moving a little bit too fast, but that's better than not moving fast enough. This is my secrets for business and life.
That's right.
But I do a lot of stuff with, actually U.S. government copyright office stuff, where Qobuz is part of organizations that, I've done congressional testimony. It runs the gamut, which is really cool. It's all kinds of stuff. I'm working with artists and their teams on projects that we're doing. I was in the studio with Christian McBride when he was recording his exclusive jazz session for Qobuz.
Yeah.
It could be anything.
Yeah. So congressional testimony? What was that about?
The music publishing royalties are paid through relatively newly created government entity called the Mechanical Licensing Collective in the United States. And so we're part of an organization that's part of that. And this, I can't even remember. This was not like in person, like being grilled by senators. Sure. This was written testimony, but talking about why I think, this was created by a law called the Music Modernization Act a few years ago. And I wrote something about how the Music Modernization Act paved the way for a service like Qobuz to be able to open in the U.S., which was 100% true. Rolling back to what I was saying before about it not even being a sure thing that Qobuz would open in the U.S. In 2018, it was because at the time, copyright law in the U.S. was not specific enough to really cover music streaming properly. And the music publishers, not the labels, but the companies that own the rights to the underlying compositions, the actual songs, the lyrics and the music, were not being properly compensated, and the law didn't cover it. It was just nobody ever thought of it. And so Spotify and every streaming service basically had been sued by music publishers. And there were massive settlements paid out, but the law didn't cover it. So this Music Modernization Act that was passed in 2018 amended or created a new regime for music streaming royalties and how they were paid. And prior to that, if Qobuz had launched and run a service like we run it now, we would still be open to lawsuit. Even if we did everything by the book, according to what the law said, we could still be sued. And the French management said, we don't want to be sued. I said, well, then I don't know if we can open. And that's kind of where things were. And then the president at the time signed the Music Modernization Act, which part of that indemnified us. Basically, we could not be sued as long as we calculated the royalties, paid them to this government entity, and sent in the reporting that went with it. The government entity pays it to the rights holders. It's like a clearinghouse. But as long as we made our monthly reporting and sent the check every month, we couldn't be sued. And on those terms, we were free to open. And that's how we were able to get Qobuz in the U.S. Launched. And that was my blurb that I wrote for this congressional testimony. The law actually allowed us to open, so or without fear of lawsuit, and we might not have opened if it hadn't been passed.
Well, thank you for making it happen.
Well, exactly. But so that was the first of many miracles in the Qobuz story.
So on the technical side, let's start talking about sound quality. One of the things that I noticed early on, and I've got to have just about every streaming service here to listen to because of my customers. Each person says, I'm streaming this. Which one's the best? Does it work with this equipment? All that stuff. What does, if anything, Qobuz do to the actual audio files when they're sent out? Are there any codecs that you guys are using to improve the sound quality? I've always noticed that the sound quality, there was a little edge over the competition. I don't know whether it was just the high-res file. I don't really necessarily think so. I think there's something to what's going on in the programming, and maybe there's a little tweaking going on to really, because the stuff sounds really good. Really good.
Here's the secret. We do nothing to the sound, which means if it sounds different on other services,
they're
tweaking
it or something.
Right. So the audio files are delivered to us by the labels. It could be Sony or it could be an independent label, whatever. It comes into us as a WAV file. I'm going like this with my hands. So WAV file, 16-bit, which is CD quality, or preferably these days, usually 24-bit high-res WAV file. And we take that file, it comes into us, and we losslessly compress it to FLAC. FLAC is free. It's a open source codec, lossless. That's the key. Audio codec. So we losslessly compress it to FLAC, and that's how we archive it. when you are on your Qobuz app and you click on play on a track, we stream that, basically that FLAC to you, and it gets uncompressed in our player, bit perfect.
Yeah.
Nothing else happens.
Yeah.
We don't do any volume, loudness normalization, which is something that I'm pushing the guys to add as a option. Like most audiophiles don't want it because it does, impact bit perfect playback. But a playlist without volume normalization can be tough to listen to, and we don't have it because of the audiophile thing. But I think as we get bigger, more and more people are going to want it as a feature. But because we do nothing, we don't do any, EQ tweaking. There's no special, we know from talking to the distributors, the third parties who the labels use to send us the music, that, based on their experience with it, every other DSP has some delivery spec or something that they do or require. That's different. We want the file that basically whatever the mastering engineer turned into the label, give us that. Doesn't need to go through anything else, which is the beauty of lossless and high-res streaming. There's no reason for downsampling, right?
Sure.
The industry standard before high-res was, they were actually already recording in 24-bit digital, and then they would downsample to 16-bit for the CD. And at this point, even that downsampling is not necessary. So, it's keeping it, why does it sound better? We say it's going to sound as good as it can possibly sound. If it was a crappy recording or, a poor mastering job, it's still going to sound bad, maybe worse. But if it's, a pristine, beautiful recording, well mixed, well mastered, that's when we see the jaws hit the floor, as I'm sure you're familiar with, when people are hearing something like that, especially for the first time.
I had an interesting conversation yesterday. We did an interview with Cookie Marinko from Blue Coast Records, and they record originally in DSD 256, and then from there, they will record at the same time on different machines to do PCM and stuff like that. But they also make optimized formats for the streaming services. It was an interesting conversation. Have you guys looked into? With the potential of with fiber these days and bandwidth and hard drive size and all that stuff, is there a possibility down the road for DSD streaming? Have you guys looked at any of that?
We sell DSD in our download store. We have talked about it. It's not that easy because of the way DSD, this 1-bit.
Right.
I don't understand it at all. But it has been done, and I've talked to Cookie about this at some length, because she was involved some years ago with a test, but it was like giant companies, AT&T, and about trying to stream, and they were able to stream these DSD files, but I think it would require a whole separate streaming architecture. So it's not top of our list.
Gotcha.
Top of our list is something much more mundane, which is lyrics. We don't have any lyrics in the app, and people want lyrics. Who knew? But
so
and that one's
sing
easy.
Along to it, right?
Yeah, but that's like relatively easy. Like showing the lyrics is not a crazy rejiggering of everything that we do. So there's definitely stuff on the horizon, and the DSD. We've got a great catalog of DSD in the download store.
Well, I can say that I was really excited about the Qobuz Connect. We sell all kinds of different companies, Orander, DCS, everybody that's got Qobuz integrated into it. But the problem with using some of these integration packages like Rune and so forth is everything doesn't look the same as it does on the app itself. And so, I got so used to using the app, Qobuz app on my phone for traveling and stuff like this. It's like, I don't want the way it's going to format differently. So it was really cool when you guys came out with the Qobuz Connect, and now, we're reteaching, if you will, some of our customers, hey, go straight to the app. It's simpler. The curation will be there that you know and love, and the playlists are easier to work with. So that was really cool when you guys came out with the Connect option.
Yeah, well, it was a long time coming.
Yeah.
We saw the convenience factor, obviously, as soon as some of the bigger companies came out with it. And it was a giant, like I've said before, Qobuz is a tiny company.
Yeah.
So get the fact that it only came a year late, only a year, and based on when we originally thought we were going to have it done, and it was launched something like 84 different manufacturers, was something I was really pleased with, very impressed and grateful
Yeah, it happened
to our
quickly.
team. To our team, once we got it going, the manufacturers from all over the world, a lot of Japanese, lot of European companies, manufacturers from New Zealand, everywhere in the world, from the most elite, like you're saying, a DCS, an Inuas. You could run the Qobuz app and stream to a flagship system that costs more than my house, right out of the Qobuz app.
Yeah.
Or, you can turn around and control your whim streamer or Bluos or, very, very affordable streamer, or, and there's more coming.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, the idea is the real differentiators for Qobuz are in that app. The editorial, the simplicity, the album focus, the magazine.
Mm-hmm.
So keeping people in the app, I think, just makes sense, and having the cooperation of all the different manufacturers, from some of these biggest brands to small but very influential, has been a great boost for us.
Yeah. So besides the lyrics, are there any other features you guys are working on that are upcoming?
Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff is more housekeeping related. I would say some big improvements to artist disambiguation, which is when artists have the same name. And in some cases, they get jumbled up on the artist profiles. Yeah. Very tough problem that we're throwing everything we have at it, which is only so much. But that's a big problem that's going to be solved. One big thing that will be a game changer for a good swath of people is our Apple CarPlay integration, which is when you use the phone in your car with a screen and it mirrors your phone. Mm-hmm. Our CarPlay app is super old and based on a CarPlay spec from when it first came out. Yeah. So CarPlay's abilities have improved a lot. So we've got a completely new CarPlay interface that's going to be much more like the actual iOS app. Yeah. I mean, it's not going to have the written content. I don't want anyone to get into an accident.
Sure.
Reading a review of a War on Drugs album while driving.
Yeah.
But I think that the album covers and more of the curation of the app available in the CarPlay interface is something people have been dying for.
Yeah. Same thing for Android Auto as well, or just CarPlay?
Android started not as bad.
Okay.
So Android is, but then that'll be next for upgrades. But just the state of the iOS app was CarPlay was not good.
Going back to the issues with the naming of artists and overlap there, I would imagine, I don't listen to a ton of classical music, but I do listen to some, and I know, classical music has always been a challenge based on, 50 different orchestras will do one song, and then you've got to sort by, whether it be the orchestra or the composer or the artist. Does Qobuz have any problems with classical stuff? Because I know there are plenty of classical music listeners out there.
It is a challenge, like you say, because the metadata fields, the search fields, the stuff that people are looking for are just different from popular music, broadly stated, with the composers, you've got the orchestra or the performers, the soloists, this that. It's different. On the compositions, you have works, not songs.
Right.
Works with multiple parts, and so it's almost impossible to do popular music and classical both very well.
Right.
Almost impossible, which is why you've had a number of classical only services over the years, figuring, we're not going to be able to do both, so it's optimized, searching by composers. But what we've done is, within the framework that works for pop music, a lot of improvements so that searching by a composer or searching by a conductor will give results that are actually what you're looking for. Doing stuff behind the scenes with the knowledge of how classical works to make sure that things are tagged and indexed in ways that will actually work. We've done a lot to improve the display of classical music with works in our apps so that they display properly. The problem is still, it's kind of an input-output problem, because, I want to listen to classical music. Am I going to type in Beethoven? Am I going to type in minuet?
Right.
Am I going to, there's so many things that are different, that it's a constant project. We do actually have a team dedicated towards improving the presentation of classical and tweaking what we can do within search to make it so it's still got to work for Rolling Stones.
Sure.
But the other thing that Qobuz has that's pretty unique, which I'm sure you've seen, is the digital booklets. So it's not all releases, but when the labels provide them, we have a PDF right in the app of the, essentially the CD booklet.
Yeah.
So for classical, that's especially useful, because that's how you get all the detailed information that, for many genres, but especially for classical, is kind of part of the experience.
Yeah. It'd be really cool. So, this is what I'm listening to right now. War on Drugs, Lost in the Dream album. And it'd be really cool if you guys could start adding like the vinyl notes and stuff like that from the records. That would be really cool. I would enjoy that.
That's in theory what the digital booklet could be, but it would be up to the labels.
That'd be really cool
to put it together for us. So maybe someday, as we grow, we've definitely got more and more labels and artist teams trying to figure out ways to do cool stuff with us.
Yeah. So what's on your playlist right now? You have any cool new music artists that you're listening to that you can introduce to people?
Well, there's a band from New Zealand who have been around for a couple of albums. They're called the Beths, Beths.
Let me look that up.
Great, indie rock, some amazing catchy songs, female fronted. They played in New York a few months ago, and I saw them. It was a great show. They've had a couple of albums out. But in terms of, indie rock, it doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah.
I've also been, I guess it's not new music. I've been going back and listening to a lot of late 90s and early 2000s hip-hop, actually. I was just listening to Talib Kweli. Like I said, I'm into all kinds of music.
Yeah. I was listening to Eric B. and Rakim last week. I was pulling up some of that stuff.
I saw Rakim not that long ago. He played on Staten Island in a City Park free summer concert.
Oh, very cool.
Walking distance from my house.
Oh, very nice.
I was like, I said, this is why I live in New York.
Yeah, no doubt.
Be able to go to something like that, and he was still, pretty powerful.
So for the new user that's just gotten to Qobuz, where's a good place for them to start? Where would you send them to figure out what to do on the app?
If they're actually already in the Qobuz app, on the front page, and there used to be a tutorial, and I think they might be bringing back the tutorial, which I think was pretty useful. But if you're just looking for something to listen to get started, if you scroll down a little bit, you come to the section with the Qobuz, human curated playlists.
Right.
And those are going to be, covering a lot of different stuff. But just on that front page display, the first 8 or so that show there'll be at least one high-res playlist to test your speakers, different genre, and themes get rotated, but we're always doing test playlists.
Yeah.
Then there's also a section in that playlist area where we have all of our hi-fi audio partners, including a lot of retailers, manufacturers, hi-fi press that do curated playlists in that hi-fi audio partners section. That's a good place to go, especially if you've just, bought a pair of speakers or a new amp. It's pretty likely that the manufacturer has created a playlist that may reflect, stuff that they used when they were tuning the speakers or whatever it is, building the equipment. So we think that's pretty cool. And, there's just so much music, so little time. Yeah. But, dive in with some playlists and, from there, it'll also build up, like I said, with our basic algorithms, a little bit of listening history, and then, the daily and weekly recommended playlists will be tuned to what you want to hear.
Yeah, so Moon Audio's got a playlist on there. It's not one that we chose to say, this is a playlist for you to test out your system, but we went to every employee in the building because we really wanted to get a variety of music. I think that's cooler than anything else. So we let everybody pick a couple of their favorite songs at the time, and that's how we created our playlist on there.
Yeah, so it's, for people that are really into music, getting other people that are really into music's recommendations and picks is what makes this whole thing go round. So I love that. And, to me, I'd rather listen to that than a playlist that someone is going to be a clinical test playlist. But because we do have, some pretty serious audiophiles in our universe, we've got it all. We've also got, chilled out lo-fi beats for studying, if that's what you want. We do have, basically all the world's music. So it's really just about finding what turns you on.
Yeah. What have we missed? Anything about Qobuz that we want to let the folks know about that I haven't covered or you haven't covered? Or
well, in this time, what we're finding seems to be really driving a huge amount of interest in Qobuz is the fact that we are an independently owned, smaller company in a world of giant tech companies, but offering really, more or less the same or superior way to listen to music as some of the biggest companies in the world. We've published our per stream average payout, which is the highest in the industry. In fact, we think, because we're the only ones who've actually published it. Yeah. But based on anything anybody's seen. And, we still push the paid downloads in our download store, which is a way for artists to make a, better amount of money than if you streamed an album even 100 times. Yeah. And we just think that there's a place for a company that puts music first and tries to do it from a position of valuing music and valuing the people who make music and valuing the fans. And we just think that as a smaller company that takes this kind of stuff seriously, it puts us in a nice position to offer a service that people are really enjoying it, and we're feeling good about providing it. I don't know. It's a nice time to be a music fan, and it's a really nice time to be alternative, not in the sense of the music genre, but alternative to mainstream big tech. We've got a nice position. Let's put it this way: the human face of modern music streaming. So to be able to do stuff like this with you and me and the team are out there, really accessible and working with the audio industry and the music industry, it's, you know, exciting.
Yeah.
And people seem to be super receptive to the way we're trying to do things. So
Very cool.
I don't know. I feel lucky.
Yeah. Dan, thank you so much for sharing your story and more about what's going on at Qobuz.
Thank you, Drew. I mean, this has been great. As you can tell, I never tire of talking about it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I thank you for the support and Moon's enthusiasm for what we're doing. And let's keep it going.
Yeah, man. For everyone watching, if you want to experience high-resolution streaming, head over to Qobuz.com to learn more and try it out for yourself. And if you need help building a system that does justice to what Dan teams deliver, Moon Audio is here to help you with everything from cables to complete setups. All links are in the description. Make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. We've got more conversations coming with people doing things differently in audio. Dan, thanks again, and this has been great.
Thanks, Drew.
Yep. We'll see you next time on the Fidelity Exchange.